Hi everyone, welcome to our LGBT Proud to Be panel today. We are doing a hybrid approach, so we've got people online and people kind of here in the Varsity Bar. We've got some amazing panelists who are going to share their experiences and just talk about why we're all proud to be. And kind of it's part of a network of events. We started off in Black History Month and we've kind of gone through, and hopefully today's going to be a great event. And please, we really want audience participation. So if anyone's got any questions, please pop your hand up. We're more happy to. If anyone's watching online, they can either pop it in the chat or there is a Q&A function, and we'll be able to pick that up. I'll try and do that as well. Bit of multitasking for me, but we'll give it our best shot. So I'm firstly just going to let everyone introduce themselves. We've got a mixture of students, kind of externals, and kind of members of staff. So yeah, I think if we start off with Alice.
Hello, I'm Alice. I am the LGBTQ plus president this year, and I'm proud to be LGBT out and loud and proud.
Hi everyone, I'm Richard Houston. I'm the head of charity for Chester Pride. I guess I'm out and proud as well as a gay man, but obviously I'm here because we support people who aren't necessarily out and proud. So I'm quite keen to talk about that aspect of how we support people that can't be themselves.
Hi, I'm Samara Hills. I'm a pop musician from Shrewsbury, and I'm a trans woman. My pronouns are she and her.
Hi, I'm Gabby. I'm VP Shrewsbury. I'm a very proud bisexual woman. My pronouns are also she and her, and I'm just excited to be here and to be able to talk about things from like my point of view and as VP Shrewsbury, but also just as a queer woman. It's great. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thanks everyone. So I think if we start off with a nice starting question, what does LGBT History Month mean to you? And we'll go the reverse way.
I mean, it's kind of just everything to me. I mean, it's so important to realize like where you come from and where your history is. You know, like we didn't just decide to wake up one day and we have these rights that are given to us. You know, we've had to fight for them. We've had riots, we've had protests, we've had everything to try to just get to be accepted as normal people and be seen as normal in society. And I think that it's so important to recognize and to celebrate people that came before us to get us to where we are today. So it's everything to me. And I just love continuing learning and doing my research during this month and months afterwards. So
that's great. Thanks, Gabby.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, for me, it's just celebrating liberation and uniqueness and individuality, and a time to particularly embrace who I am and everyone else who's in the community as well. So, and to celebrate it.
Thanks, Samara.
I mean, LGBT History Month for me means a lot of work because obviously we need to put on events, put stuff like this. We obviously do stuff on social media, etc. But I think, yeah, you know, just to echo what's been said, it's about recognising the journey we've been on and trying to figure out how to avoid history repeating itself, because that's something we see a lot and we're seeing it now. You know, some of the anti-trans rhetoric that's pushed in the media, you literally substitute the word trans for gay and it's exactly the same stuff they were saying in the 80s in the AIDS epidemic. There's obviously elements of that that are new and more virulent, but you know, there's also a lot of times where history does repeat itself. So for me, it's thinking about Pride as a political movement and using LGBT History Month to recognise that journey from the first Stonewall marches right through to today, and how we can continue that narrative and keep building our own history as well. History is made all the time, and we keep, you know, LGBT people keep breaking records or becoming the first to do something, and it's important to recognise all the recent history as well.
That's great. Thanks, Richard. And Alice?
Well, echoing what everyone said, it's good to look back and see where we started and how far we've come. But it's also important to use our history, and this month allows us to teach and inform anyone who might be new to the community or maybe not out in the community about where we started and how far we've come, and possibly bolster their own self-worth by allowing them to see that they can be out and proud in the modern day, because we're not like we used to be, where we had to hide. So it's important for allowing our community to expand by showing everyone that we are a lot further ahead than we used to be.
That's great, thanks. I'd just like to pick up on something that you kind of said there, Alice. I think kind of over the last 2 years with COVID and everything, a lot of people who perhaps weren't out have had to go back home. Students, that's something we've had quite a few students come and tell us, and that they couldn't be themselves and they've almost been in isolation at home. How's that been for you and kind of for everyone?
I can understand where people come from this, because during COVID, and right before COVID, I was actually I just finished up a job as a youth advisor, where I would signpost LGBT young people to where they can get support. And one of the big things that I saw, because I was actually in college as well at the time, so I was surrounded by a lot of younger people who already lived at home, and they sought college as a way to move out, a bit similar to uni, where they would be able to move out and be who they are. And this forced them back home, which forced them backwards in time. And it was not good for their mental health. It was a lot of mental health issues that were sparked by that, by this feeling of, I was finally being who I am, and now I have to hide again. But it's important to show them that it's not always the case, and for some of them maybe it is difficult, but there's a lot of support available, such as at Chester Pride.
I mean, we actually in March of 2020 launched our Just Ask helpline, and immediately it was of benefit to people who were in exactly that situation. They'd gone home, they'd been forced back into the closet, or they weren't living with parents who were quite understanding, or they lost a close family member to COVID who may have been one of the only people that did accept them, for example. And we notice we're still now, even after 2 years, still dealing with a lot of the effects of COVID. It has affected the mental health of a lot of LGBT people, as with a lot of people, but it's also undermined a lot of our community. Yeah. We relied on going out to safe spaces, going to things like Pride events, and we've not had that chance. To mix and keep ourselves together, because we talk a lot about found family in the LGBT community. You know, when our own families reject us, we find family through connection to other LGBT people who do support us and validate us. And of course, COVID has potentially, changed a lot of that for a lot of people. So it's working on the front lines, as it were, trying to support people has been a huge challenge. In our first 12 months of operation, we had 3,500 contacts, which was not way beyond what we anticipated. But it means that there are people getting help, that we're able to get them support and get them to a place where they can be. But it's just that clearly there's a lot going on for the LGBT community right now. So our work is more important than ever, really. And the work of trying to be a community together and come together at things like LGBT History Month is just as important as it ever was.
If you don't mind me building on that found family prospect, one of the big things that we saw as an issue during lockdown was actually a spark in the rise of homelessness amongst the LGBT community. A lot of people who had come out while they were living in temporary housing from their studies, and had maybe they'd come out and joined in a same-sex relationship, or they'd come out as transgender and maybe gotten rid of all of their old clothes, which is a very common thing in the transgender community. Then they go back home and they find themselves unable to go back in the closet because they've gotten rid of anything that allowed them to be in that. And this caused a lot of them to get kicked out of their family homes, which sparked a big issue. And there was not much that really could be done other than maybe other people who are allies or also in the LGBT community creating these surrogate families that would take them in off the streets and give them temporary housing.
That's great. Thanks, Alice. Thanks, Richard. Samara, I'll just pick up on a question for you now. Obviously, the arts during COVID got disrupted completely. Yeah. So how was that kind of experience for you, and especially as kind of an LGBT pop star?
I flash myself as a pop star. Oh my god.
I've promoted you.
No, I mean, my love for music and the arts really started with performance and live shows, and like you say, that completely came to an end when COVID hit and we all went into lockdown. But actually I discovered that meeting people online, people in my community and musicians, changed my life actually. I, during lockdown, connected with so many trans women with all different backgrounds, all over the world, with completely different stories. And something that I realised is that I feel as though when you come out as trans, or for my personal experience, I felt as though it almost became my identity. I was seen as the trans person rather than Samira. And people tend to have a fixed idea on what being trans is. But the truth is, and I know this from meeting all of these people, not meeting them, but connecting with them, that everybody's story and everybody's journey is completely different. And it was just so lovely to meet people who, though had very different journeys, related to me so much, and as much as I related to them. And I think just to have, again, that sense of community and that love just kind of allows me to be even prouder of not just who I am, but being part of such a wonderful and significant community. So yeah, lockdown was quite an inspiring time for me. So yeah.
That's really great. I think I've lost my train of thought now, just
Well,
listening to you there.
I have a question to build up on that. During lockdown, we saw an increase in online streaming services such as Netflix. And one of the big things that came out of this was knowledge that some of these bigger platforms are actually starting to show a lot more support for the community. A big way of describing this would actually be Elliot Page, who recently came out as transgender. And there was a lot of questioning about Umbrella Academy and what they would do with the character. But one big thing that was not questioned was the support that Netflix showed them, of the actual changing of the credits for all the seasons that had already been recorded and uploaded to show their new name. How do you feel about this as a way of going forward in the media as well as the performing arts?
Well, I feel like there definitely could be a lot more recognition and appreciation for, people like you and I by these bigger companies, because they hold such responsibility and they have so much power. They can do so much. Yeah, I think, what could be done maybe?
Yeah, I'd have to kind of second that, because I mean, I would come from a musical theatre background. That was my bachelor's here. And a lot of our assessments in third year had to be done online. We had to do our entire musical for third year online. But yeah, it's such a huge platform that like Hollywood and the media has to be able to express these stories. So when it came out that Netflix decided to change everything and like put in Elliot Page's new names and pronouns and stuff, I was sat there like, oh my gosh, the power that has. Like, there's obviously still work that absolutely can be done to help promote people, but it was kind of a nice step in the right direction. It was kind of nice to see that like a big company that like grew in streaming services over lockdown kind of just went, yeah, cool, all right, quick change, done.
Yeah, I believe it was actually the first of its kind to happen as well, was to show that these things that have already been recorded and put out there, they're not invulnerable to change. They can actually be changed, and it shows that for any actors in the future that could come out, it's a step in the right direction because they can change those names. So it's going to put a lot more pressure on some of the companies, however, that if they are unable to, maybe due to budget reasons, it might cause them to have their backlash. So I think there's pros and cons to it, but it is definitely something that we can look for in the future as our part of our history.
That's all great to hear, and I love how everyone's bouncing off each other and throwing kind of different questions. It's great, and if anyone wants to ask any questions at all, feel free to pop your hand up. Probably a question for Alice and Gabby, kind of picking up on the University of Chester kind of experience. Do you feel like the University of Chester is inclusive, and do you feel there's anything else we should be doing now and we can kind of be looking to explore with the university?
So I'm from Shrewsbury campus, and obviously Shrewsbury's quite a smaller campus. So I actually didn't really know too much about like what LGBT+ services were offered at Chester University for Shrewsbury campus. I will say though, I did come out when I was in university because I had such a really good friend group that I met through university that made me feel comfortable to be like, no, actually, all these questions and stuff that I've been having, like, I feel like I'm in a safe enough space within my friend group here that I can just say, yeah, no, I am a bisexual woman. It felt so nice to be able to say it out loud, and it was such a normalized thing. And I think since coming into the role as UP Shrewsbury and seeing what's been done with like the Respect campaign and with having LGBT plus society and LGBT plus on student council, and being able to, you know, work with Alice, work with Amethyst, and kind of build up more recognition, I feel like it's built up more of my support within the University of Chester, and I feel so much more comfortable, and I feel that like we're making a lot of good steps in the right direction at Chester.
Oh, it's great to hear.
I feel like the biggest bolster we've had in the LGBT community on campus has to have been in the student body. We show a lot of pride, and I feel like that is what the university staff actually build off of. Our showing of how we're out and proud actually helps the university know which areas to support in, because if we weren't so loud about who we are, they wouldn't know what their ratio is or who they need to focus on the support for. And one of the recent ones would actually be the introduction of putting their pronouns on emails, because pronouns become such a big thing in the last few years. So that shows that they are actually progressing with what the current issue is. And that means what that means to me is they're looking and constantly watching the LGBT community to make sure that they're up to date with whatever they need to be up to date on. And especially when it comes to the well-being services, they offer so much support and they do so much work and actually help us feel more comfortable.
And just picking up on the pronoun stuff, just in some of the training and stuff that like we've been as officers, a lot of the times when we introduce ourselves, we say our name, our position, and our pronouns. And I've never had to do that now until I was an officer, and I love it. And it makes it more inclusive, and also make sure that you're not saying the wrong pronouns and like misgendering somebody. And it's so nice that it's so normalized now, and that it needs to keep getting normalized. So
I've noticed that amongst the students, it has become very normalized to use they, them, which I'm very happy to see, because one of the things that I've been trained on every single time I've worked in the LGBT community is to use they, them until you know someone's pronouns, which actually I realized I forgot at the start of this to say my pronouns, which are she, her.
Yeah, actually, just going back to us talking about kind of them bigger networks like Instagram, they recently made it an option to put your pronouns in your bio, didn't they? Which I think is a huge thing.
Love that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It was amazing to see that.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I don't think that any of us that have not actually done that amongst the student body, which is great to see, because it means that if we are advertising our Instagrams as a way to contact each other, we can actually always make sure we're using the right pronouns. But it's not just there, it's the ability to edit our names on things like Zoom and Teams, so we can edit our pronouns into our names.
That's great. That's really interesting. And again, I'm just loving how everyone's bouncing off each other. It makes my job as the kind of chair a lot easier. I'll just go out the back and you guys can have a conversation. No, that's amazing. So Richard, I think kind of over the last probably 18 months, couple of years, the university and kind of Chester Pride have tried to work together a bit more. I think it's a relationship me and kind of everyone here wants to kind of continue to strengthen. Just putting you on the spot, really.
I can't promise anything, you know.
Yeah. Can you sign some things? No.
Because it's massive contract.
Is there any kind of key things that you think we could be working together on to kind of support the whole community in Chester?
I think what's been quite nice is we actually started. Okay, here you go. History lesson for you. It is LGBT History Month. Chester Pride technically started in 2011 at the university. That was the first event. If I'm honest, I had only just left Chester University then, so I don't really know what went on. But it didn't take off, unfortunately. And in 2013, a working group was put together, headed by the council. I think it involved the union in some way. to put on then Chester Pride, our first event, as it were. Then it got split into a charity, its own thing, and now 2022 we're carrying our 10th event. And we originally started in 2013. We deliberately timed the event to start in October, to ensure students could come, because the university was one of our biggest sponsors. And then unfortunately they decided after a couple of years that it wasn't worth it financially, and they stopped. Not blaming naming names or saying anything, it stopped. But what has been really lovely is that there was a kick up from the staff and the students, and that drove leadership to change their mind, and they started sponsoring again. And since then we've had a real relationship, a real growth to that relationship. They've just doubled their sponsorship for this year, for example, which is fantastic. And it's not just about the university giving us money and us saying, all right, that's great, come and join us in the parade. We come into campus, we do training, we talk to networks, we come to events like this to help support what's going on here, because we know for us, certainly wherever LGBT people are, we want to support them. And so now that's kind of what I see the relationship evolving into, is one of mutual support, where we can be a bit more involved on campus, we can show our face a bit more, we can get our helpline down here a bit more often and let LGBT people know they can talk to us about anything, any problems. But we'll know, you know, the university will bend over backwards to facilitate that. But similarly, if they're facing issues, if there's staff that's struggling, if they want to change policy, we're there to advise and to help shape that and make sure that they can continue their inclusivity journey. Because they were one of the first organisations to get a Navajo charter mark, which is similar to all the Stonewall stuff. But if I'm honest, it's a lot more robust. You have to prove a lot more things. So for the university to get that shows they've made a great start on their journey, and we're just there to respond to their need. You know, whatever the students need, what the staff need, we will be there to support them, whether they sponsor us or not technically. But if you can keep giving us money, then we can keep it on our event, and it's fine. I hope I answered the question. I went on a bit of a ramble there, but
no, it's great. I love just hearing kind of everyone going through these little rabbit holes, and just, we get somewhere in the end.
Yeah. Buys us time to think. I think. Just ramble for a minute, and then you'll know the answer.
I mean, it kind of ties into one of the questions I have, which is something that I get asked quite a bit, which definitely is one that's actually which feeds right into what you just saying, which is why is there no Pride currently? And I think that shows a difference in time since that first time when we tried to have a Pride here, which the LGBT community has developed a lot over the last 10 years. I talk about it quite a lot. If you look at the last 5 years, you will see a huge difference in representation. And I think that it might be something that could be looked into again in the future.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot more we would like to do, but we are, as ever, constrained by time and money.
Yeah.
There's 3 of us that work for Chester Pride, and we do helpline, social support groups, training, consultancy, obviously events like this, and obviously run an event every year. So for us, it's we would love to do that. So if there's a way for us to work with the university to bring those events and use student power to facilitate them, then we will help support that as best we can as well, because there should be a Pride on campus, because half the time you've all gone off on your holidays when Chester Pride's on. So if you
look at like Cambridge, and
they
all have their own. All these big Ivy League colleges have their Ivy League universities have their own Pride, which just shows how they're inclusive of students.
Definitely.
It's not even like a main Pride. It is definitely just a way of the university showing off all the different areas that they support us.
Oh, yeah.
It's also so important to work with organizations like Chester Pride and community, because bring it back to your point, like community and LGBT plus is so big, because it's where you find people that you can connect to. It's where you can find people that you can share stories with and stuff. Yeah. And for students that maybe it's their first time being away from home and it's a completely different town or a completely different country, in my opinion, in my perspective, it's nice finding communities outside of university, so that when you're in your summer periods and you're still here, that there's safe spaces that you can go to where you can fully be yourself and you'll be accepted, and it's people that you've worked with maybe on campus, but then also people that you've worked with in the community, and it just makes everything just seem a lot easier, like a better transition into university life.
And it's about that transition out as well, because I came to University of Chester to study history, graduated in 2010, and I've stuck around ever since. So for me, it's looking at those students who stick around and making sure, yeah, they get involved with pride things on campus, but then what's the pipeline when they come out of it? I don't want them suddenly, feel friendless in the city because, that was for the students. It's no, if we can blend our activity, do stuff on campus and let them know there's stuff for the summer months, stuff for when they graduate, then hopefully we can keep building Chester up as a very inclusive and safe place. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, building on your idea of a safe space, that's kind of what societies such as the LGBTQ society and also the Catholic society and all these other societies that support specific groups of people, all of us are just trying to create that safe space where people can get to know each other within the same religion, community, anything of those kinds. And that's kind of the big strive. We're not the societies that do like events like the Marvel Society and the Crag Society, where they're actively creating groups that can game together or watch movies together. We're mostly just trying to support people within the community and making friends and creating a safe space.
It's interesting you bring up safe spaces, because it's something that gets repeated to us a lot, is that there's a desire from the community to be able to go to a place and fully feel themselves. I think that ties in quite nicely to the theme, is everyone wants that safe space where they can just be who they truly are instead of hiding things away. So for us as Chester Pride, we try to do that through the event. We were also, this is an exclusive announcement, about to launch a safe space scheme where we can verify public spaces, so pubs, cafes, libraries as well, things like that. We'll go in, we'll make sure they have the right policies, the staff act towards people in the right way, and all that kind of stuff, to make sure we know they are a safe LGBT space, and then we can tell everybody else about it. But obviously the work that the university does drives that campus wide, and hopefully in satellite campuses as well. It makes just the entire student body feel like they live in a permanent safe space. I know it's not always perfect, but for what I have experienced with the University of Chester, they do a great job most of the time.
So something that we've been trying to organise as well, Jericho, the speed friending events, where we're trying to create a safe, isolated space where people can make friends. And it's not exclusive to just LGBT people, but it's a safe place that we can go and try to make friends. And that's kind of what it is at the end of the day. It's just having that safe environment where you know that you can be yourself. And that is one of the biggest things you can do to make a friend, is be yourself. But sometimes you feel like you have to hide. And that's where these sort of events come in.
Definitely. And I think it picks up on something that kind of in the planning of our initial LGBT History Month, which Gabby kind of really wanted to kind of do, and was trying to pinpoint some of the safe spaces across Chester, across Shrewsbury and Warrington.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Shrewsbury has its own, LGBT plus community. It's there's the Shropshire Rainbow Festival that happens every October, which is kind of like, it's got like a little, if I'm remembering correctly, they have this like little kind of scavenger hunt around Shrewsbury of like little places. They do like movie viewings and that kind of stuff, and it's really cool. And what I like about a lot of businesses in Shrewsbury as well is that they have a little rainbow flag sticker on their doors. So that means it's like a safe LGBT plus like included space. So it's really nice. But yeah, it's definitely something that I've like brought up and that I want to continue working, is making sure that like every campus that's Chester University has a space that is open and safe for LGBT plus students. But not just that, it's allies as well, because it's allies as well. Allies are hugely important to the LGBT plus community, because they're there to kind of just support, and we build a community that way with people. So it's not just LGBT plus people that are there, it's the allies that are there. We're talking, communicating, and it makes it a wider community.
Definitely.
I mean, if we look around Chester, we'll see that there are some drinking establishments that have that rainbow stick on the door. From what I remember, it was actually a program that was set up by the police a few years back, which shows which businesses have a direct line to the hate crime unit at their local police station, which was the police trying to just show that we are here to support you, and we want to make sure that everyone can be safe no matter where they are. And I'm sad to see that didn't continue expanding. I've not seen it expand to other businesses for like 2 years, because it was happening across the UK.
Definitely. Well, again, a little exclusive. Jordan, our VP for activities, is kind of looking to set up with the council kind of a student voice forum, so it could be something we could really easily pick up there. We've got that voice, we've got that space, so why not use it? Picking up on kind of prides and pride events, thinking back to the original Pride, it was a riot. I think we see Pride now as a celebration. We have kind of the big celebration events and marches, similar to like Chester Pride. But is there anything that we could be doing kind of as a community, kind of as a students' union, as a bunch of students, that is a bit more activisty and kind of, you know, continue the fight?
I mean, the most important thing in my mind is to challenge like homophobia in all its forms. I think the biggest issue that we kind of see at the moment is just it's largely focused around online spaces. People, you know, putting their views up in an online space, they're actually quite hurtful and hateful, and they just kind of they get shouted out into the void, and no one challenges it. We experienced this slightly this week in that we have tonight our first trans social support group happening, which is online based. We did a Facebook advert for it, and we kept getting messages or comments on the post from all over the world, and all of them transphobic. So obviously we replied to some of them, but mostly just deleted them. Yeah. Because we're trying to again build that online safe space. We don't need that. It's to, I think for me, it's trying to make people understand that yes, everybody's an ally and they are important. So even me, I am a gay man, I consider myself a member of the LGBT community, but I know I'm not trans, so I have to be the best trans ally I can be, for example. Yeah. So it's not just within the community, without the community, it's within the community as well. Yeah. So it's challenging that behaviour, trying to educate people, fighting the fight on behalf of those members of our community that are most vulnerable. That for me is the biggest thing we could try and do, is to keep the activism alive. Yes, Pride's are more of a celebration now. That doesn't mean they're not apolitical. They can still be a place of politics and campaigning on issues. But the fight now largely just takes place everywhere, because we've got that, you know, the immediacy of connection through online spaces and stuff like that. So it's just making sure you're constantly challenging where you see homophobia and pushing the positive messages and that sort of thing where you can, and coming to things like this and posting about them online. That does a great service as well. I mean, there's loads. I could spend hours talking about this. I could give you like a huge book on, right, this is how you be the best ally. But obviously, you know, we all don't have time for that. So it's just challenge where you can, would be mine.
Well, I can summarise it into just a few words, which these are few words I heard for the first time last year. Pride is not just a day. Mm-hmm. It is every day. And we should treat every day like we would treat a Pride Day, and support everyone within the community, no matter who you are, no matter what sexual orientation you have or what gender you fall under. Just treat everyone like you would on Pride Day.
I mean, it does largely come down to don't be an arsehole.
Yeah. We could sometimes dance with that as well.
The title of next week's session.
With that, it's also just education, you know, using those online platforms to go to training modules, like how to be an ally training, how to be, you know, a safe space, be a safe person, like be a hate crime reporting center, you know. It's a lot of education. It's remembering that it was a riot first and foremost, because of, you know, the atrocities that the police were committing in New York City at that time, within Stonewall, that caused the first riot. And it's just constantly learning, you know, like nobody has all the knowledge. Nobody is fully arrived with knowing everything. You know, I'm still learning everything myself every day. I'm still reading up and learning, and I think that's also a way to be an activist, is just keep yourself learning, keep getting out there, finding the resources, and making yourself like the best ally. We were just having this conversation on the train about, you know, I'm like you said, I'm not a trans person, but I'm an ally for trans people, because, you know, I'm there to support, I'm there to listen, I'm there to be a person to help other people out. And I do that by researching, by talking, by listening, by being in a community, and that's the best way to do it. That's what I'm trying to do with everything that I do as VP Shrewsbury. Is all of my campaigns and things I put on are centered around education and celebration, because you can't do something without learning where it came from and why it is the way it is and why we're doing things the way we are today because of what happened before.
Yeah, exactly.
I think when we're talking about supporting people coming out, it's important to also discuss supporting people coming out as transgender, because it's not the same thing to come out with what sexual orientation you fall under as it is to come out as transgender. You could feel so safe to say to someone, I am gay, but also for the same person not feel safe to say, I think I'm transgender. Because gender is such a tricky thing to talk about, and you never know how someone's going to react, especially if there's someone you've known for a long time. It can make it a lot harder because they've known you as one gender for a long time, but they might struggle with the change of pronouns. I experienced this within my own family. Do they love me any less? No. Do they judge me for my decision? No. They just struggled with the pronouns, getting the pronouns right, just because they've known me for my entire life.
Yeah.
So one thing that you can publicize when you're saying I am a safe person to come out to is also say I am a safe person to come out to for anything, or I'm a safe person to come out to if you think you're transgender.
That's really interesting. Thanks, Alice. Back to a kind of a topic we kind of touched on it a bit earlier, but a big thing that we've done kind of online this year is kind of highlighting inspirational people from the LGBT community. I know Gabby's led on that for our team this year, but just who is a member of the LGBT community that you look up to as like a role model or a mentor? And we'll start with Alice.
Can you start on the other side? It's so many. It's hard to pick any one person because there are so many people who are inspirational. But I think I would start with probably Freddie Mercury. When they came onto the scene, they never once hid who they were. They came on, well, as we all do, they came out with a bang, and they just came out with I am this, I am proud, and I am going to show it off no matter what. And there was a lot of hate that was thrown towards them because of how they chose to dress in their music, and they just ignored it all. They carried on and never let anyone stop them. And they kind of just challenged gender boundaries within clothes, because I agree with them. I don't think there should be any gender boundaries within clothes. Wear what you want.
100%.
Is this me now?
It can be.
I think so.
Let's go for it, Richard.
I feel like, as one of the head of Chester Pride, I should know an answer to this question, but I never do. If I'm honest. I think I tend to, because I like my life moves so fast, and then there's a lot of people I admire, and then it turns out they're secretly problematic, and you don't realise until much later. I mean, I literally grew up with Harry Potter, and now I can't even stomach having the books in the house anymore. For example, but at the moment there's a little group that are inspiring me. There's a small group of trans people who are on Twitter, and they run the Trans Safety Network, Transactual accounts like that, and they just highlight a lot of what's going on. They challenge misinformation that comes through government statements and policy and all that kind of stuff, and they highlight how there's a lot of shady money going around, a lot of far-right American evangelical organisations funding hate groups in the UK, like LGBT Alliance and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, they are trans people and they put themselves on the line for trans rights. And I can't imagine how exhausting that is for them, how mentally draining. So the fact that they keep doing it every day is that I find that overwhelmingly inspirational.
That's great. Samara?
There's a lot of trans YouTubers that I've always really looked up to, particularly Gigi Gorgeous, who's a trans female. And I can honestly say that if I hadn't discovered her, I'm not sure I'd have come out, because the videos that she was making convinced me that it was possible. And to embrace feeling the way that I felt. And I mean, she talks all about makeup and I'm into that, so win-win situation really. But yeah, people like that being themselves online, because I mean, social media is huge.
Yeah.
It's such a huge network, and you can find anything. You can find the answer to most things. So yeah, I think Gigi Goodison.
I can safely actually say, as someone who is a transgender YouTuber, the amount of hate we actually get. I get so much hate. I once had to block 13 people in one go, and another 31 in a different go, because people were just making fake accounts just to continue the hate. And until YouTube really puts in a algorithm that blocks people via IP address, it's just going to continue, and it's very difficult, it's very challenging, and it can be very disheartening. So I actually admire anyone who continues their way through it.
Yeah, no, I really admire that you do that.
Gabby.
So I knew about this person prior to doing research on it for LGBT+ month, but one of the people we've highlighted this month that I really look up to is Harvey Milk. Fantastic man. You know, he was one of the first openly gay elected officials in US history, and the work that he didn't just focus on the LGBT+ community, but he was building a community for women, for Black people, for Asian people, for people of all different backgrounds, for poor people, for making better education for people. And he was from where I actually moved here from, which is Northern California in San Francisco. And I didn't realize that the Castro district, which is like the gayest district in San Francisco, and it's absolutely wonderful. There's a giant rainbow down the street. It's a wonderful place. The businesses there are incredible. There's like one of the best diners in the world there, and I'm waffling, I apologize. But like, I didn't realize that until I was doing research, that it's there because Harvey Milk helped establish it as a Castro Village Association, and he opened it to be, he started it as a way for queer businesses to come in and have a comfortable space within San Francisco, and kind of became the revolutionary community building that like places all around the US took inspiration from. And just learning about that made me prouder from San Francisco and from that area. And I just think I'd love to continue his work of like building safer spaces, not just for my own community as a woman and as LGBT+, but for people that like everywhere.
Just can't watch the film anymore because it's got Sean Penn and James Franco in, both of whom are problematic, and ruined another thing for me, you know.
It's the person that we focus on, not the actual Harvey Milk himself is the research we focus on. Yeah.
As we talk about like problematic people within the community, Harry Potter you mentioned, I'm so glad that we can actually go back to buying Harry Potter merchandise, because if we buy from the Wizarding World or anything that has the Wizarding World logo on it, it no longer supports J.K. Rowling, because
Etsy.
so many of the
on
Etsy as
buy
well.
from fans.
But so many of the actors actually support the community so much that we can actually buy safely because they got her name stripped from their Wizarding World. But at the same time, a lot of them have actually opened up like LGBT and transgender support groups and charities. And they do so much for the community. So in a way, they're also a big inspiration for the community.
Definitely. I suppose it comes down to how can you separate the art from the artist and how comfortable you are with that. I mean, I take a lot of things to heart, which is probably why I run a helpline effectively, because everyone else's problems become my problems, which is a nightmare to deal with mental health wise, but I manage. So I take it quite to heart, so I do struggle to separate art from artists in that sort of way. But there are ways, often you will find when fans are let down, certainly in this kind of circumstance, fans are let down by the creator, they will find other ways to flourish, and you can find safe spaces within those fandoms. It's quite nice.
Yeah, I find it sad the only one really that you can still look at where the actors have actually allowed us to continue in loving it is Harry Potter. But then if you look at Fantastic Beasts, it hasn't really had the same impact with the actors there. It was only really the actors from the original series, the Harry Potter series, that really supported us. And it's sad to see that, because I would have loved if it had been from both sides.
That's really interesting. Thanks, everyone. So that kind of brings me to the end of my questions on here. But I think it'd be a great opportunity for anyone who's got any kind of closing remarks, anything anyone wants to say, and then we'll be able to open it up to the audience if anyone's got any questions or kind of, want to ask anything. So.
I think it's just really important to do things like this and to bring people in to just talk, because I don't think, we all talk a lot, but I don't think we're talking enough about what's important and what needs to be said. And I think having spaces like this within the Students' Union and within universities, it lays groundwork for people going forward. Again, for me, university was the place where I came out, and now being able to work at the university where I felt comfortable enough to do that and building upon the work, it's kind of like a full circle moment for me. But it allows me to as well continue building on work, building those safe spaces and having those conversations, because who knows, like I could be the person that someone is like, hey, I'm feeling this way about, and if I can help somebody else through my work, then that's absolutely what I want to do. And I think continuing doing things like this allows for those conversations to be had amongst people and their peers and their staff and supports and such. So it's hugely important.
Definitely, yeah. I think we all have responsibility. Just going back to what we were discussing at the beginning, all of the LGBTQ members throughout history that fought so hard for us to have a better life. Mm-hmm. We need to continue that fight, and we need to make sure that those people didn't fight and die in vain. We now have the power to, make them proud and do them justice. So yeah, having those conversations and writing.
So I feel like I need to say something really impactful and meaningful. You've all inspired me. I think for me, like, just it's taking the theme of this talk, proud to be, and it's like, if you feel like you can't be yourself, reach out and find a community, find support who will let you be yourself, because otherwise you'll become trapped and depressed and it will spiral and that sort of thing. So for me, obviously, it's an opportunity to plug. Chester Pride is there. We've got our Just Ask helpline. Come along to the event Saturday, the 13th of August. There you go. I managed to get it in. Had to. It's my job. But obviously, yeah, just find people, that you can talk to either on campus or in your friend group or an organisation like us that will listen, and make sure you can feel empowered to be yourself, because ultimately, for the past 60 years now, that's what we've been fighting for. That's what Pride is about, the right to exist as we are without interference, molestation or prejudice. That's all we ask. Just want to live my life,
I think it's definitely important to look at this event as a way that we can show that there's so many different areas of support available to you, so many different areas fighting for you just within the campus. And that's why I think that this was such a good idea, is so that we can show off just how much we have here on campus. We're actually quite lucky, because not everywhere has this amount of support, and not everywhere is going to have multiple communities like this in LGBT Shrewsbury as well, if I remember correctly. So there's one on Shrewsbury, there's one here. We've got so much support for everyone that you're able to come out safely here, because we'll have you back, and not everywhere does have that, which is sad to say.
Well, they were all very impactful, so I don't know what you're saying there, Richard. and you got the plug-in, which which is always a tick box of these these sorts of panels. So I just think that kind of brings me to say huge thank you for all our panelists. So hopefully everyone can join me in a big round of applause for all them. I'm sure everyone's going to be kind of sticking around for a bit. If anyone's got any questions now, we'll be more than happy to field them. If not, you want to grab them just after, please do come up. But again, a huge thank you to everyone for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, Jack.
Yeah.
Thank you for organising this, Jack. It's been incredible.
It's an honour. So a big round of applause for everyone, please.
Our next event we've got coming up is the drag workshop at Shrewsbury. I got to do that plug there as well.
Yeah.
24th of February, we've got a drag workshop going on with our very good friend Indy. That's coming in and doing drag workshop. It will be filmed, so even if you're not at Shrewsbury, you can still be a part and ask questions and everything. So
Perfect.